the cold vacuum of space, the Xanthian fleet moved with eerie precision. Their sleek, biomechanical ships gliding through the stars as if they had always belonged to the darkness between worlds. They were the apex of a highly evolved species, known for their merciless conquests of lesser civilizations. Yet, Earth, this small blue planet tucked away in the Sol system, was something they had never encountered before. According to their scans, it was a world with a history of war, but nothing to suggest it was anything more than another primitive species on the brink of technological birth. The Xanthians had seen countless planets with species that resembled Earth's inhabitants. Most of them were weak, their empires non-existent, and their technology far below what the Xanthians could crush with a thought. But Earth's military capacity had been detected as far beyond the norm, with strange anomalies in the data. Yet, the Xanthians were unconcerned. A primitive species could not develop such power on its own, not without intervention. They could easily deal with whatever threat humans could pose. Their fleet's leader, Commander Orcs, was a towering figure, both physically and intellectually. Orcs was known across the galaxy for making quick, precise decisions, conquering systems with minimal effort. A calm, cold strategist who believed the key to success was to study, understand, and eliminate threats before they even had a chance to rise. To him, Earth was no different than any other planet he had faced. They would either surrender or perish. The Xanthian fleet entered Earth's atmosphere under a veil of stealth technology, cloaked from the human radar. Orcs watched from his flagship, a command vessel that could cut through a planet's crust with ease, as his officers prepared for the mission. They had studied Earth's communication channels, learning the rudimentary languages and the various factions that populated its continents. The plan was simple: land in a secluded military base, initiate contact, and determine whether this was a simple misunderstanding or the first step toward a full-scale conquest. When they arrived, they expected to find disorganized humans, scrambling for control in an underdeveloped world. Instead, they were met with something far different. The humans on the ground didn't panic. They didn't flee. They didn't even seem to be curious. Instead, they moved with purpose, their eyes narrowed in cautious focus as if waiting for something. Orcs's heart quickened, sensing an unexpected tension in the air. He tried to push it aside, reminding himself that their fleet was far superior. Whatever humans had prepared, it would not be enough. The first signs of trouble appeared when a human officer, Colonel Elena Hart, stepped forward to greet them. A calculated calmness radiated from her, a warrior's poise. And behind her, a dozen soldiers stood at attention, weapons slung across their backs. Her eyes locked onto Orcs's as if she had already judged his every move. She wasn't afraid. That was the moment Orcs realized something was wrong. Humans weren't as primitive as they had believed. "Welcome to Earth," Hart said, her voice low but steady. "I suggest we begin our conversation with a display of mutual respect. If you want to know about our planet, we'll show you what we've built. If you came for something else, I'm afraid you'll be very disappointed." The words echoed in Orcs's mind, unsettling him. A simple greeting, yet it carried an unmistakable weight. This human, this species, was not what they expected. The game had already changed. As Commander Orcs's fleet hovered above Earth, his mind was a swirl of questions. The first encounter had left him shaken, but he couldn't yet afford to show any sign of weakness. The human officer, Colonel Hart, had spoken with an authority that suggested knowledge far beyond what Orcs had anticipated. The planet was supposed to be a primitive, war-torn world, teeming with insignificant tribes. Yet these humans weren't just survivors. They were organized, focused, and had weapons capable of taking down Xanthian scouts with frightening precision. The Xanthians retreated to their flagship, trying to analyze the humans' behavior. Orcs convened with his most trusted advisors, yet they were all left dumbfounded by the implications of the humans' actions. No species they had encountered had ever exhibited such confidence. There was no sign of terror, no pleas for mercy, and certainly no surrender. In the face of their overwhelming power, the humans stood firm, as though they were the ones in control. To understand this strange species, Orcs turned to the one tool he trusted most: data. Using advanced scans, he accessed the records of Earth's history, delving into humanity's past. What he uncovered was a deep and complex tale, one that painted a picture far more dangerous than what the Xanthians had anticipated. Humanity's history wasn't a story of random chaos or mindless conflict, as he'd initially assumed. It was a story of survival against overwhelming odds. The humans had fought for every inch of their existence: wars, plagues, famines, and natural disasters. Time and time again, they had been pushed to the brink, yet they never fell. From the earliest tribes fighting for dominance over limited resources to the global conflicts of their world wars, humanity's history was one of relentless struggle. Orcs scanned the events of their greatest wars, the First and Second World Wars, global catastrophes that had scared the planet and cost billions of lives. The humans had fought in the face of nuclear annihilation, yet they had come together, defeating enemies far more technologically advanced, rebuilding, and then reaching toward the stars. In the process, they had developed technologies that allowed them to wage war with a precision and creativity unmatched by any species Orcs had encountered. But what truly disturbed Orcs was the nature of human warfare. It was not just about technology or weapons. It was the mentality. Every conflict had forged humans into something more than just soldiers. They had become engineers of war, thinkers, strategists, and innovators in battle. Their ability to adapt, to use their environment and technologies to their advantage, had made them formidable foes. As Orcs sifted through more records, the weight of humanity's resilience began to set in. The creation of new forms of combat, aircraft, tanks, and weapons of mass destruction, had only deepened the humans' capacity for war. But even in the darkest hours of human history, their capacity for creativity and innovation had shone through. From building towering cities amid ruins to developing complex systems of government and organization, they had done more than survive. They had thrived. Orcs had underestimated them. This was no primitive species. Humanity's ability to endure, to fight, and to adapt was unlike anything he had encountered. He couldn't help but wonder if the Xanthians had made a grave mistake in underestimating Earth. In a flash, Orcs realized that this was no longer about the simple conquest of a backwater planet. Humanity was far from being a feeble species. They were a war machine in the making, a force forged in the crucible of conflict. What had once seemed like an easy victory was now a dangerous gamble. He had to rethink everything. The more Orcs studied, the clearer it became. Humanity wasn't just a species to conquer. It was a species to be reckoned with. The following morning, Orcs convened with his officers aboard the flagship, his mind still wrestling with the gravity of what he had uncovered about humanity. As the fleet waited in orbit above Earth, the Xanthians began to prepare for what they assumed would be a relatively simple interaction. They were confident in their technological superiority and were certain that the humans would fold under their overwhelming might. However, they had severely underestimated humanity's resilience. Commander Orcs had read the data, but the raw force of human determination was something no amount of intelligence could truly prepare him for. He was about to witness firsthand how far this species was willing to go. It began with a sudden, calculated attack on the Xanthian recon unit stationed near the base. The Xanthians had left their forces relatively unguarded, assuming the humans would not dare to strike first. But humans were not so easily intimidated. Colonel Elena Hart, having assessed the threat level, had already put her forces on high alert. Her instincts were sharp, her soldiers disciplined. When she received word of the recon unit's presence, she wasted no time. In the dead of night, Hart's squad moved into action, using the cover of darkness to launch a surprise attack. The Xanthians, confident in their shields and advanced weaponry, were taken by surprise as the humans launched a series of explosive charges and energy-based weapons, tearing through the enemy's defenses. The battle was intense, brief, and calculated. Everything Orcs would expect from an elite force, but there was something more. The humans fought with a passion that struck him like a blow. They didn't fight for the sake of battle. They fought with purpose, with a collective will that made them dangerous beyond measure. Hart's forces, though vastly outnumbered, used guerrilla tactics, adapting to the environment with an ease that shocked the aliens. They worked as one, each soldier anticipating the next move, each operation a seamless flow of precision. Despite their inferior technology, the humans were causing severe damage. The Xanthians attempted to retaliate with their advanced plasma rifles and energy shields, but the humans had already anticipated their tactics. They hacked into the alien systems, using their advanced cyber warfare techniques to cripple the Xanthian recon units' communications. In mere minutes, the invaders were isolated, their command structure crippled. It was at this moment that Orcs fully understood. These humans weren't just surviving. They were fighting for their existence. There was a resolve in their every action, a drive that made them far more dangerous than any species he had encountered. They were not just defending their homes, they were defending their very identity. It was a force born of necessity, a collective survival instinct that had been tempered through centuries of war, hardship, and innovation. As Orcs surveyed the battlefield from the comfort of his command center, he felt something he had never felt before: doubt. The humans had responded not with fear, but with fierce resolve, and their ability to adapt, to fight back with such ingenuity, had caught him off guard. He had miscalculated the human spirit. The fire that burned inside them was not something to be easily extinguished. For the first time, Orcs realized that this was not going to be the quick conquest he had envisioned. The humans were capable of more than just resistance. They could become a force that could rival, or even surpass, his own. He had thought of them as a fragile, primitive species, but now he saw that they were more akin to a wild animal, cunning, powerful, and unpredictable. And just like a cornered animal, they would fight with everything they had. The war had truly begun. The Xanthians were reeling. They had underestimated the humans' ability to strike back, but they still believed that their superior technology and firepower would eventually crush the resistance. They had no idea what was coming. Colonel Alina Hart stood in the command center of the human base, surveying the data as reports from across the planet flooded in. The initial skirmish had been a success, but now the true scale of the Xanthian threat was clear. The enemy was planning a full-scale invasion, and their weaponry was far beyond anything the humans had ever faced. Ships capable of orbital bombardment, ground mechs that could level entire cities, and weapons that manipulated energy in ways humanity had only dreamt of. It was the kind of overwhelming force that could obliterate entire civilizations. Yet there was no fear in Hart's eyes, only determination. "Prepare for full mobilization," she ordered. "We're not just defending, we're going on the offensive." As Hart issued the orders, the human forces sprang into action. Earth's militaries, long scattered across the globe, had been building and improving their technology for decades. Their weapons may not have matched the Xanthians in raw power, but they had something far more dangerous: adaptability, ingenuity, and unity in the face of a common enemy. The human war machine was like a beast awakening, its gears grinding into motion, each piece working in harmony. The entire world rallied behind their military efforts, every nation offering up their technology and manpower to fight the invaders. The first taste of what was to come arrived with a series of airstrikes. Using their modified fighter jets, the humans launched a blistering series of precision strikes on the Xanthian command ship, aiming for weak points they had studied from their earlier encounters. The Xanthian fleet was caught off guard as the human fighters flew low and fast, avoiding the alien ship's massive weapons with stunning agility. The air was filled with chaos as explosions tore through the enemy fleet, crippling one of the Xanthian vessels. In the chaos of battle, humanity's ingenuity became the Xanthians' worst nightmare. When the Xanthian mechs descended on Earth's military bases, they expected an easy victory. The mechs were towering machines of death, outfitted with plasma cannons and reinforced shields. But the humans, having studied these new threats, fought back with surprising ferocity. They deployed advanced exoskeletons, lightweight but powerful suits of armor that enhanced human strength and speed. The exoskeletons weren't as imposing as the Xanthian mechs, but they were designed with agility and rapid response in mind. Human soldiers, operating in teams, struck the mechs where they were weakest, exploiting blind spots and targeting key mechanical components. One by one, the Xanthian machines began to fall, their advanced technology failing to keep up with the relentless onslaught of human creativity. With each fallen mech, the humans gained more ground, forcing the invaders to retreat. Meanwhile, Earth's most brilliant minds had begun working around the clock. Using the data recovered from the earlier skirmishes, human engineers reverse-engineered the Xanthian technology at an unprecedented rate. Within days, humanity had developed countermeasures for the alien shields and weapons. The Xanthians, who had once viewed Earth as a primitive world, were now facing an opponent that had turned their own technology against them. The human resistance was not just fighting back. They were evolving, adapting to every new threat the Xanthians threw at them. Their methods were unconventional, unpredictable, and relentless. It was no longer just a war for survival. It had become a war of innovation. Every day, humanity proved that they were capable of more than just surviving. They were capable of transforming their world into a battleground where they could not just fight but win. Commander Orcs watched in disbelief as the Xanthian forces struggled against the wave of human ingenuity. His fleet, once confident in its superiority, was now on the back foot. The humans were no longer an easy target. Orcs knew they had made a grave mistake. The planet that had seemed so insignificant was rapidly becoming the most dangerous place in the galaxy. And there was no turning back now. The battle for Earth was no longer a question of if the Xanthians would succeed. It was now a question of how much longer they could hold on. What had begun as a calculated conquest had transformed into a desperate struggle for survival. Commander Orcs, once confident in the overwhelming power of the Xanthian fleet, now found himself fighting a war of attrition. Earth's resistance had surpassed his expectations, and the resolve of its people had evolved into something Orcs had never before witnessed. The humans had quickly turned the tables on the Xanthians, using their knowledge of the terrain, their guerrilla tactics, and their ability to reverse-engineer alien technology. Now, Earth's defenses were stronger than ever, with each day bringing new advancements and strategies. The Xanthian fleet, unable to dominate the skies as they had initially planned, was being whittled down slowly but steadily. Orcs's pride was wounded, but it was not just his ego that was at stake now. It was his fleet's very existence. On the ground, the human forces had become an unstoppable force. Colonel Elena Hart, a symbol of humanity's unyielding spirit, had taken command of the largest resistance unit, leading an assault on the Xanthian supply lines. For days, she had been coordinating attacks across multiple fronts, exploiting weaknesses, and turning the enemy's technological superiority into a liability. The invaders, used to crushing inferior civilizations, had never faced an enemy like this, one that not only resisted, but fought back with cunning, creativity, and unity. Orcs had underestimated the most important aspect of humanity's defense: their will. No matter the losses, no matter how many of their cities were burned or their comrades fell, the humans kept fighting. They had come together as a single unit, their diverse nations and cultures now unified under the banner of survival. Their forces were no longer just an army. They were a symbol of what humanity was capable of when pushed to the edge. As the Xanthian fleet struggled to regroup, Orcs called for a final, decisive strike, a massive offensive to crush the last remnants of human resistance and break their morale. It was an all-or-nothing strategy, a gamble that could either ensure his victory or destroy his entire fleet. The Xanthians amassed their forces for an assault on Earth's largest military base, the last remaining stronghold of organized human resistance. The battle would be a bloodbath. But the humans were prepared. Intelligence gathered from intercepted Xanthian communications revealed the timing and scale of the assault. Hart's forces had already begun their counteroffensive days in advance, setting traps and preparing hidden defenses. The humans knew that a direct confrontation would be disastrous, but they also knew how to fight on their terms. In the darkness of the night, under the cover of Earth's storm clouds, they launched a series of devastating surprise attacks on the Xanthian command center. The humans struck like a hammer, targeting the core of the Xanthian offensive and crippling their command infrastructure. The Xanthian fleet, which had been poised for the final assault, was caught in the confusion. With their systems overloaded by human tactics, they were unable to coordinate their forces effectively. What had seemed like a flawless victory for the Xanthians quickly turned into chaos. Orcs's command ship, once a symbol of superiority, was now under siege, its advanced systems failing one after another. The human forces, despite being outnumbered, were systematically dismantling the Xanthian war machine. The tables had finally turned. What Orcs had failed to understand was that the spirit of humanity, their refusal to submit to tyranny, was the greatest weapon of all. As the Xanthian fleet reeled from the surprise attack, Orcs was forced to make an impossible decision. The invaders had reached their breaking point. In the heart of his flagship, Orcs clenched his fists. His fleet was crumbling. The war, which he had expected to be a quick conquest, had become a fight for survival. He had underestimated humanity. And now, the consequences were clear. The humans had awakened, and nothing would be the same again. The Xanthian fleet was reeling. Every blow the humans landed seemed to strike at their very core. What Orcs had believed would be a simple invasion had become an unexpected nightmare. Despite their advanced technology and overwhelming forces, they were being outmatched by human resolve and ingenuity. Their once unshakable confidence had turned into uncertainty, and with it, a creeping panic began to spread among the ranks. Orcs was no longer the unshakable commander he once was. The realization that his conquest was failing gnawed at him with every passing hour. His fleet, once the terror of the galaxy, was faltering under the combined weight of human determination and technological prowess. He had underestimated Earth's capacity to adapt, to innovate, and to unite in the face of overwhelming odds. Yet, Orcs was not one to yield easily. He knew that if he allowed the humans to continue gaining ground, they would eventually force him to retreat, and that would spell the end of Xanthian dominance over the galaxy. He needed to act decisively. There was no room for hesitation. In the depths of his flagship, Orcs convened a war council, his officers standing at attention as he outlined his final strategy. The time for subtlety was over. It was time for a decisive strike, an all-out assault on Earth's capital city, the heart of the human resistance. If he could break the morale of the human leaders, destroy the symbol of their unity, he might still have a chance to win. "We will launch a final offensive," Orcs declared, his voice cold and calculating. "We will strike the heart of their government, their leaders. If we wipe them out, the rest of humanity will crumble. They cannot fight without their leaders." His officers nodded, preparing for the deadly mission. The plan was simple but brutal. The Xanthians would use their most advanced weapons, focusing all their firepower on the heart of Earth's government, its largest city, New York. The Xanthians had already infiltrated the human communications network, and they knew where to strike. It would be a surgical strike, one that would send a clear message to humanity. They were no longer in control. But Colonel Elena Hart had anticipated this. She had known that the Xanthians would not stop until they had crushed the human leadership, and she had been preparing for it. She had already gathered the remaining leaders of Earth's resistance, pulling them into an underground network of secure locations. The city of New York was important, but it was not the heart of humanity's resolve. The heart was the spirit of the people, united, relentless, and resourceful. If the Xanthians destroyed New York, they would still have to face the will of the entire planet. The humans were not ready to give up. As the Xanthian fleet began to mobilize for their final assault, Hart's forces took action. The resistance had intercepted the Xanthian communications, and they knew when and where the attack would come. The humans quickly activated a series of EMP devices hidden across strategic locations in the city. The Xanthians had no idea that Earth had developed the means to disable their advanced systems. As the EMP blasts went off, they triggered a wave of disruption across the Xanthian fleet, disabling communication channels, shields, and navigation systems. The humans, knowing their time was running out, launched their counterattack with everything they had. Fighter jets streaked across the skies, targeting the vulnerable Xanthian ships. On the ground, human soldiers, once thought to be outmatched, had adapted alien technologies and fought back with newfound fury. They had learned to operate Xanthian weaponry and technology, turning it against their creators in a war of attrition. In the skies above New York, as the Xanthian ships descended, the humans launched their final gambit. A coordinated strike against the flagship, the heart of the Xanthian invasion force. They had one chance, and they were willing to sacrifice everything to make it count. As Orcs watched the chaos unfold from his command center, a sinking feeling settled in his chest. The humans were fighting with a ferocity and determination that no enemy in his lifetime had ever shown. His ships were falling one by one, and their coordinated counterattacks were shattering his carefully laid plans. He had underestimated them. He had underestimated humanity. It was now clear. Earth was not going to be conquered. The Xanthians had already lost. The battle above Earth was chaos. Xanthian ships, once invincible in their superiority, were now falling one after another. Each attack by the human forces pushed back the invaders, forcing them into retreat. The surprise EMP blasts had crippled the Xanthian fleet's advanced technology, leaving their vessels vulnerable to human weapons and tactics. Earth's fighter jets, now fully armed with reverse-engineered Xanthian tech, swooped in for precise strikes, sending explosions rippling through the skies. Humanity had made their final stand, and with every passing minute, the Xanthians lost their grip on the planet. On the ground, Colonel Hart and her forces were coordinating the attack from multiple fronts, using the distraction of the airstrikes to launch their own assault against the invaders' last strongholds. Xanthian mechs, once thought to be unstoppable, were being dismantled by the same human ingenuity that had turned the tide of the war. They had adapted Xanthian weapons, learned their weaknesses, and used the environment to their advantage. The resistance forces, fueled by desperation and hope, fought with everything they had. And it was paying off. In the Xanthian command ship, Commander Orcs stood at the helm, his face a mask of frustration and disbelief. The final offensive he had so meticulously planned was crumbling. His fleet was being wiped out, his forces scattered, and his command ship itself was under heavy fire. The humans, once thought to be primitive and weak, had proven to be far more dangerous than anything Orcs had encountered in his long military career. Orcs's mind raced, calculating the best course of action. His fleet was too far gone. The humans had cut off communication, destroyed key systems, and were now launching direct strikes on his flagship. The once mighty warship shuddered under the barrage. His bridge was in chaos, officers scrambling to make repairs, but it was clear. Their time was running out. "We need to retreat, Commander," one of Orcs's officers shouted over the din of alarms. "The flagship is failing. We can't hold them off any longer." For a brief moment, Orcs hesitated. He had come so far, led his people across the stars to conquer this insignificant planet, and now he was faced with the crushing reality that the humans, those who had once seemed so fragile, were defeating him. But pride would not save him now. He had no choice but to admit defeat. "Prepare to abandon ship," Orcs ordered coldly. The words tasted bitter in his mouth, but there was no other option. His fleet had been decimated, and Earth's defenses were now more than a match for what little remained. As Orcs and his officers fled to their escape pods, the final battle raged on. In the skies above, the remaining Xanthian ships were in full retreat, attempting to flee Earth's atmosphere. But the humans were relentless. Fighter jets pursued, never giving them a chance to escape. On the ground, the last remnants of the Xanthian army were overrun by the human forces, who stormed the battlefield with fury and precision. Within hours, the Xanthian invasion had collapsed entirely. The humans had not only survived, they had triumphed. The invaders, once certain that Earth would be theirs for the taking, had been defeated in a spectacular display of human resilience, innovation, and unity. The city of New York, once a target for annihilation, stood strong. In the rubble of battle, humanity's resolve had proven to be their greatest weapon. The Xanthians had underestimated them, and now they would pay the price. In the depths of space, Orcs' escape pod drifted aimlessly. The fleet was lost. The war was lost. The human resistance had won. And in that cold, empty void, Orcs faced the unthinkable. He had been defeated by a species he had once deemed insignificant. Humanity had proven their strength, their unity, and their ability to adapt. The Xanthians were no longer a threat. Earth had not only survived, it had become a symbol to the galaxy of what a determined, united people could achieve. The invaders were gone, but the story of humanity's defiance would be remembered forever. The smoke of battle began to clear, but the echoes of the fight remained in the air. Earth had endured, and against all odds, it had emerged victorious. The Xanthian threat, once deemed unstoppable, had been shattered by the resilience and ingenuity of humanity. The invaders were gone, but the consequences of their attempted conquest would resonate for generations to come. Colonel Elena Hart stood atop the ruined walls of what was once New York's iconic skyline. The city, battered and scarred by the battle, now stood as a symbol of humanity's defiance. A sense of quiet reverence settled over her as she looked out over the destruction. The cost had been high, and many lives had been lost. Yet humanity had persevered, and that perseverance had become their greatest strength. "Is it over?" a voice beside her asked. It was Lieutenant Ramos, one of her closest officers. His eyes were tired, but there was a spark of hope in them, hope that had been kindled during the darkest moments of the war. "It's over," Hart replied, her voice steady but tinged with exhaustion. "The Xanthians are gone. Earth is free." Across the globe, celebrations had already begun. People filled the streets, waving flags and shouting in triumph. The entire world had united in the face of an existential threat, and now, that unity was a testament to what humanity could accomplish when they stood together. The divisions that once seemed so insurmountable, between nations, cultures, and ideologies, had melted away in the furnace of war. In the face of annihilation, humanity had found something extraordinary within themselves. But the victory was not without its scars. There were memorials being erected in every city to honor the fallen. Soldiers, civilians, and leaders alike. The cost of victory was measured in lives, and Earth's people would not forget the sacrifices made. The war had been brutal, but it had also ignited something far more profound. It had sparked a sense of global unity, an understanding that, despite their differences, humanity was stronger together than apart. The lessons of the war would shape their future. As Hart made her way down to the command center, she found herself reflecting on the journey that had led them here. It had all begun with a simple misunderstanding, an alien race that had thought Earth was weak, primitive, and easily conquered. But the humans had surprised them. They had fought with everything they had. They had turned the tables on the invaders, using their adaptability and innovation to outsmart a technologically superior foe. Now, Earth was rebuilding. Humanity was not simply returning to the way things were before the invasion. They were emerging stronger, more united, and more aware of their potential. They had faced down the darkness and come out victorious. The war had shown them just how much they were capable of, how far they could go when pushed to the edge. In the aftermath of the conflict, the human race stood at a crossroads. Their technology had advanced rapidly due to the knowledge gleaned from their enemy, but they also understood the dangers of unchecked power. Earth's leaders had already begun discussions on how to use this new technology responsibly, ensuring it would benefit all of humanity, not just a select few. And there was another question lingering in the air. What would the galaxy think of Earth now? The Xanthians had once been seen as invincible, the epitome of technological might. But their defeat at the hands of humanity would change perceptions across the stars. Other species would take notice, and Earth's story would become a legend, a testament to the power of human resilience, ingenuity, and spirit. As Hart looked up at the stars above, she knew this victory was only the beginning. Humanity had proven that they were not weak, that they were capable of surviving anything the universe could throw at them. Earth was no longer just a dot in the vast expanse of space. It was a force to be reckoned with, a beacon of hope and strength for all who would listen. The legacy of humanity was just beginning.